Please give Dr. Neufeld a warm welcome.
Thank you, Jonas, for your generous introduction. I'm delighted to be here with you today in this beautiful surroundings in one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Those of you that are here must feel very fortunate to live here, especially 6 months of the year. I visited once in June, I think twice in June, and the foliage was just wonderful. And I'm honored to be asked to be a voice of developmental science, along with my colleague, Professor Pulkkinen, at this conference. My approach, as Jonas explained, is as a theorist. And as a theorist, my job is to be able to take all the pieces from literature, from research, and from practice, and to put them together in the hope that a picture emerges that makes sense. Trying to distill to the essence what is at the source of well-being. In this, my title is very similar to my colleagues: How to Ensure the Well-Being of Our Children and of Our Society. And of course, if we can ensure the well-being of our children, the well-being of society will follow automatically. And so this becomes the greatest issue. I believe, generally speaking, we all want the best for our children. But what is at issue is what is it that they truly need, and how is this to be achieved? And so we cannot evaluate this, we cannot evaluate our programs and our policies unless we understand this, unless we get this right. As a developmentalist, not only a developmentalist means two things. A developmentalist means that you are concerned about children, and a developmentalist also means, in terms of approach and philosophy, that you are primarily concerned about children realizing their potential as human beings. And so the study is basically what are the conditions that are conducive to the realization of this potential, and what impedes this. And so this is the study, the longing, the yearning. We now have the advantage of neuroscience to help us understand how the brain works, so we can reduce this in a sense, or distill this to the well-being of our brain and its development, and look at the conditions this way. But we'll start at the larger question, at the larger issue. First of all, the belief, the assumption that every single child is born with the potential to be fully human, to be caring, to be considerate, to be civilized. But not all children realize this potential. And why is this so? And why is it that we are having such difficulty in our society today, even in countries like Sweden and Canada, where the economic issues have been taken care of? Why is it that our children are actually, there's many indicators that they're decreasing in their signs of well-being and not increasing? We thought, and many thought, that if we could took care of child poverty, we would be able to take care of all the other things. This is why we must understand, we must have some kind of model, some kind of an idea of what it is that is necessary. What are the requirements? And so first of all, what do we mean? What does it mean for a child to realize his or full potential as a human being? Now, first of all, the developmentalist is not concerned about individual potentials. The developmentalist is not concerned about individual differences. The developmentalist is concerned about the potential to become fully human. And when we put those pieces together, just to be able to explain this, it largely centers around three different factors. First of all is the ultimate yearning of all development, the ultimate yearning of development to become a viable being, just like during the development of the fetus in gestation, that at the end of gestation you can cut the umbilical cord and the child is viable biologically. Then the issue becomes to be viable physically, to be able to dress oneself, walk on one's own 2 feet, have one's own language and communication, and so it's physical viability. But then on the heels of physical viability comes psychological viability, to be one's own person, to be able to have one's own thoughts, to have a sense of one's own steering wheel, to have a sense of aspiration, and so on. And so a viable being is able to function separately and independently, to be a true individual and one of a kind, unique and able to function separately. So this is one aspect of this, is this, and the realization of potential, of course, is spontaneous. We know it. We can't command anybody to grow up, even though we'd like to. We can't teach anybody to grow up, although we try. But acting older does not make us more mature. And there is no reinforcement for this, and there is not one pill that has been invented by humans that can increase our maturity even 1 iota. When you realize this, you realize, oh my goodness, the most important thing here is that we can't help growing older. That we can't help, but we don't all grow up. And that is an issue, and that is an issue of realizing our potential. So what is it then that is the difference between one child maturing, their potential unfolding, and another child not? What are the conditions? So that's one aspect of it. A second aspect is that humans have the unique trait of having the potential to be the most adaptive of all creatures. We have the ability to be transformed by adversity, to be changed by the things that we cannot change. We have the ability to adapt to more circumstances and situations than any other creature can. What is the key to that? What are the conditions for that? This is our human potential. We are having an explosion of diagnosis among our children that are non-adaptive at the core. The brain cannot find workarounds. In neuroscience, we call the equivalent of resilience neuroplasticity, where the brain can find the workarounds for the things, the handicaps and disabilities, situations, losses and lacks, and many children are not at all showing this, that in fact, very concerned about the degree in which children do the same thing over and over again. Perseverating behavior is increasing, and they're unable to adapt to the circumstances and situations in their world. The third potential is as a social being. This is largely misunderstood. Social, of course, refers to our proclivity, our inclination for togetherness. We love togetherness. We want to be together. And of course, attachment theory speaks to that togetherness, is that we seek contact, we seek connection, we seek love, we seek belonging. But in the social being, our potential is not just to get along, not just to have connectedness, not just for community, but it has to do so in such a way that our individuality is not suffocated, that we can do togetherness without the loss of separateness, and separateness without the loss of togetherness. Now think about this for a moment and see how hard this is to do even in your marriage. This is difficult. Some of us are working at it on a second and third marriage. You know, it takes a long time, but this is the issue. The issue is not simply getting along if it's at the expense of your own personhood. The issue is not to be an individual if it's at the cost of community. It's not enough simply to be diplomatic if you've lost your integrity, or to have integrity if you've lost your diplomacy. We have put a great emphasis, and we're putting a great emphasis on children to be nice, to get along, to fit into society. But we've forgotten what our potential is as human beings. It's just not for togetherness. It's not to fit in. It's to fit in as an individual. To fit in without losing our own sense of being and identity and uniqueness and individuality. This is our potential as human beings. How is this achieved? What is the root? We are busy we're busy trying to push children into social development. But what is the actual etiology? What are the actual roots of this that we can get this? Because we're not doing very well at these things. In fact, as Western civilization as a whole, we're not doing very well here. The whole Western civilization is showing signs of not delivering the kind of children that would be characterized by having realized their potential. Now, developmental science has evolved tremendously with brain research in the last decade, and a picture is emerging of how development was meant to happen and what is required for potential to be realized. And in the time I have with you, I'm going to try and distill this to an essence and give you a picture. We cannot evaluate policy unless we have a model and understanding from which to evaluate it. We cannot inform policy, develop policy that is truly going to be in the best interests of children without knowing what it is that they require. And so that's where we will begin. 3 irreducible needs that must be met for children to realize their full potential as human beings. Now, by irreducible, we mean incapable of further simplification, distilled to the essence. In other words, it can't get any more basic than this. So what we're trying to do is get it right down to the bare essence of things. And we are focusing here on the psychological needs, not the survival needs, but the psychological needs that are required for potential to unfold, not just to survive, to live, but for potential to unfold. And so I will sketch a model of this. These things may be very surprising to you. And in a sense, they were surprising to me as I kept on pushing and pushing and pushing through factor analysis to take all the research and all the practice and say, what does this have in common and this have in common? And a theorist longs to get the number 3. This is a very important number. This is a sacred number for 3 because it's the shortest way around the phenomena of 3 linear factors. And so we always push for 3. I think that's what happens to the theologians and why they push for Trinity. But it always goes to how you get around this phenomena. And so it comes to 3 irreducible needs that must be met. If we're going to bring this to 3, this is what it looks like. First of all, and surprisingly, because it's considered frivolous in society today, is the need for true play. All offspring of mammals play. It is a primary way to the realization of potential. There's not a mammal that play is not the root to the development of potential. As humans, as human beings, we have not realized how significant play is, and all development.